Welcome to the Believe Again podcast, brought to you by Visit Planner. I am your host, Josh Robry, and in this season, we are excited to be talking about relaunches. So if you're looking to relaunch, rebrand, or revitalize your church, I think we're going to be able to help you with some of these conversations that hopefully give you some practical advice and also inspire you along the way. And today, I'm very excited to have a very special guest. I'm truly honored to have Pastor Jason Laird of Citizens Church in Franklin, Tennessee, which is about to launch and have their first service. Jason has been a friend of mine for a long time. He's pastored Sozo Church. He started a consulting agency called Sidecar Leader that helps pastors. He has a lot of value to add to you, and I'm excited for you to get to hear from him as he talks about starting again after already planting, now planting again, and what he's learned about finding the true definition of success. Let's jump into that conversation.
First off, Josh, I want to tell you thank you for having me on here. I know we've been trying to work it out and trying to dial in our schedules and stuff, so it's good to get to kind of be here. And I think it's perfect timing with us planning a church again. So God works it all out. So thank you for having us on here, or having me on here. I grew up in the church. My parents were Assemblies of God church planners and pastors all over the Southeast. Even did some missions work in India and in Africa, a little bit of South America. And probably when I was about 14, 15 years old, my dad's life just kind of began to crumble and fall apart. And he never dealt with some of the issues from his family of origin. And so the pressure and pace of ministry began to cause those things to come up. And so, man, he became verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive. Our family fell apart. And, my life was in shambles. But whenever it was probably 15 to 18, as I was just running hard away from God, my life just became very, very broken. And there was a church, at the time it was called Trinity Christian Center, later to be known as Healing Place Church, led by Dino and Dylan Rizzo. They kind of came right alongside our family in a time we were very broken. And the name of their church, Healing Place Church, a healing place for a hurting world, became more than a mission statement. It became a reality for myself and for our family. And God brought healing and freedom and salvation to my life. And so at 18 years old, I just decided, I'm going to live for Jesus, but I'm going to do everything I can to help people just like me find hope and healing in Jesus. And so committed my life to ministry there. Felt called in 2000, so I was 18 years old, felt called to plant churches and to do missions. That was what the clearest call was, plant churches, do missions. I told my youth pastor, said, hey, I feel like I'm called to plant churches. He said, well, plant yourself in this church, serve the vision of this house. And then if you do that, God will take care of your future. And so that's what we committed to. Eventually became youth and young adult pastors there at Healing Place Church and served there from 2000 to 2013. And then had a season where we transitioned over to a church called Gateway Church in Dallas, Texas, served as executive pastors there, overseeing next generation ministry for 4 years. And then in 2017, the elders and Pastor Robert Morris, they felt like, hey, this is time to send these guys out to plant. And so through ARC, through our family and all of our relationships there, we were trained, resourced, and we parachuted right into a crazy city, the city of San Francisco. So we planted right there. Didn't know anybody, but just from ground zero, started building team, doing interest meetings, all the stuff that we train about in ARC. And in September 2017, we launched, and we had a great launch with almost 300. I think it was like 276, 280 there in San Francisco. And we had 2 years of just building and grinding and hustling. And then in March, what happened to everybody was COVID. And it just really, we were shut down for 67 weeks. Yeah, 67 or 68 weeks. No in-person service, just preaching to a camera and doing whatever we could to try to keep people connected. And then in May of 2021, through talking to our elders and through talking with another sister church, City Life Church in San Francisco, we decided to unite our churches together to be at a place of strength. And didn't see it coming like that. Didn't see things turning the way that they did. But I look back now and I see how God used all of it to now have us where we live today. We live in Franklin, Tennessee, in the Nashville region, and we're planting another church. I don't know if we're just like suckers for punishment or what, but we're like, let's do this again. So I guess that's why I'm on here.
Well, yeah, I wanted to do a season on relaunches, and I think, your story is unique because I think, when we do like the ARC conference or really any conference I go to, there's always a session or like a breakout on, if I could do it again, and you're getting the chance to do it again, what would you do differently if you could do it again? And I think, a lot of people, they look
Yeah.
back on their life and say, hey, if I could do things again, what would I do differently? And you're getting the unique opportunity to do that. Sozo was a great church that was very influential in ARC. I think that it was the most influential kids design that I have ever seen come through the channels. I feel like every single person took Sozo Kids and just changed their church name and used that
Yeah.
design. And you've helped many, many churches. You've been helping churches for at least the last couple of years with Sidecar Leader. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. We've launched Sidecar Leader. I've been coaching pastors and stuff for probably a decade, but probably, I don't know, 3 years ago, there was a pastor that was taken over from his father, and he approached me about formalizing that coaching. So that's how Sidecar Leader was birthed. It really wasn't out of vision. It was out of an opportunity and a need and just wanting to serve pastors. And it's just grown, it's blown up, and we have a lot of great clients that we partner with, serving lead pastors, their executive team. The whole idea behind Sidecar is we're not the leader, we just come alongside the leader, helping them go further, faster. So equipping them with all the organizational development stuff that they need and things like that. So it's great to get to do that.
Well, and so you have a lot to offer pastors. Whether someone's relaunching or whether they're listening to this and because they heard you were going to be on it, or they just wanted to check out some new principles. You have a lot to offer, and I'm been looking forward to this conversation. We've, like you mentioned before, we had talked about this months ago about doing this, but really, it's always good to have a friend on, and you're someone that I just want to take a second and honor, because when I was in my toughest, most difficult moments in life, you were a big pillar for me. And I think it's something you've done for many, many people over and over again. But I'm one of those people that you helped out. And I remember the day I called you, I think I just texted you and I said, hey, I just had my last day on staff at my church. And you said, there's a place for you here. There's grace for you here, something along those lines. And that really blew me away, because you didn't know what I had done. You didn't know if I had, burned someone's house down and gotten fired. You were just making room for me. And I just was not used to that kind of grace. And so I greatly appreciate you, man, and all you've done for us.
Absolutely, man. Well, the reality is we all have some kind of story, and we were longing for a seat at someone's table and needing grace. I know that's my story. Nobody believed that I was even saved except for Dino, I think, whenever I was 18 years old. And he's like, I think he still got like a prison bracelet on his, probation bracelet on his ankle, but you're welcome here, And so I just was trying to express what I had received, so.
Well, you're a good man. And during those times where we began to talk, you told me way back then that you had a dream to plant a church in San Francisco. And so I had a kind of a unique seat, because you kind of just dropped that on me at a coffee shop on Highland Road there in Baton Rouge. Like, hey, I think I'm going to plant a church in San Francisco one day. That's when you were still at Hill and Place. And I thought that was like the greatest thing I ever heard. I just thought, man, those people need Jesus. And you went there. And I just, now you're in a completely different environment in Franklin, Tennessee, but maybe kind of paint the picture, because people say like, oh, I planted in San Francisco. They were an hour and a half from San Francisco. They didn't really plant in you were in the city. And so I'd love for you to maybe share a story or two about like, what was that like pastoring in San Francisco?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I would say that there are some great churches in San Francisco. Even right now, I was thinking about the Biddles, Tim and Robin Biddle. They're pastoring a great church there. You got John and Elena pastoring a phenomenal church. There's a lot of great churches that are there doing phenomenal ministry. And they all have their different stories, And sometimes San Francisco can be painted into just the bad stuff, but there's some really beautiful, I like to say there's beauty and brokenness in every city. And we're to magnify the beauty, and we're to merge that brokenness over to make the broken things beautiful. So there's a lot of beautiful things about San Francisco, but it would not take a rocket scientist to figure out that San Francisco has kind of taken some turns in a bad direction over the years. But for us, man, I'm coming from the South. I'm a Cajun from Louisiana. Then was in Dallas, so I kind of became a cowboy. Then I go to California, and so I'm crazy. It's like I don't know what I am. And
Cali Cowboy Cajun.
Yeah, culturally, it could not be any opposite. And I remember, one of the first times we had a service, they had someone that dumped like a couple hundred condoms on our doorsteps. of the church before Sunday service, like welcome to church, you know.
Yeah.
Then another time, I remember we were finishing up a service, had a phenomenal Sunday. We're leaving our parking lot, and there was literally about 25 men and women completely nude on rollerblades, rollerblading down the street. You know, it's like, welcome to San Francisco. So just really crazy things. We had one couple come into our service, the middle of the service, come in the back, pop open a bottle of champagne and drinking champagne in the back while I'm preaching. I mean, it's like, you just never know what you're going to get. But not everything was as bizarre and crazy as that. There's a lot of just great stuff that you see everywhere. People just encountering the presence of God, people coming to faith in Christ, marriages being restored. Yes, there's some wild stories, but there's also some stories that aren't so wild, but they're definitely wonderful. You know, it's those stories of just people that were lost, people that were far from God, coming into an environment where they're able to experience grace for maybe the first time. Maybe they've been a part of church experiences they've never had before, but they experienced something different. Grace, a grace message, a gospel message, radical hospitality, and see their hearts open to the gospel. There's nothing like it. And we saw a lot of that. And so those are the memories. I laugh at the funny, crazy, wild memories, but I hold those other ones really close and dear to my heart, you know.
You're in a new season. You know, you've taken some time. You've been helping ARC. You've been doing Sidecar, and now you're going to plant a church. So tell me, you know, why are you doing this again?
Yeah, that's a great question. What would make me decide to do this again? You know, I sometimes I'm asking myself that question, like, am I, you know, a sucker for punishment or what? But you know, I think Jeremiah, I guess it was, said it best. Like, it's like fire shut up in my bones. You know, there was Dave Olerking used to always say, Dan's father, he would say, if there's anything else you can do, you need to go and do it. And so, you know, I wrestled with it for a while. I actually told myself, like, man, I think I'm going to be able to fulfill that call. Because remember, the call was in 2000 that I felt like the Lord said, I've called you to plant churches, plural. It wasn't to plant a church, I've called you to plant churches. And so I thought after San Francisco, okay, well, I got experience in planting an urban church in a post-Christian secular city. Now maybe I'm going to use that and other things through ARC and through whatever, and I'm going to plant churches that way more kind of apostolically. And I'm going to continue doing that for the rest of my life. But I still couldn't shake it. It's like, it's one thing to tell someone, here's how you plant a church. It's another thing to get into it and roll up your sleeves and do it yourself. And so I just couldn't shake it, Josh. Like, I would go to church here in Franklin, or I was traveling, speaking at different churches, and I loved it. And it was part of my calling, but it wasn't all of it. And I think I got to the place where I thought, you know what, the only reason I wouldn't try again is out of fear of what people may think because of the way the last season went. And I remember writing in my journal, the only way, it says, it's impossible to build God's reputation without being willing to risk yours. And I thought, why should I care what anybody thinks? If this is tumbling on the inside of me, I've got to at least trust God, believe God, and dare to hope that if he's done it before, because we had a beautiful church. We can't help that COVID happened in the way that those things happened. So I just kind of got down to the point where I said, you know what, I don't really care what anyone thinks. I care about what God's going to say to me when I stand before him on that day. And there's something that he's called me to do, and that's to plant churches. And I cannot stop thinking about it. I have vision for it. And so, man, I just prayed, and I got together with counsel, with my spouse, with different people, and I just said, I can't shake it. And I remember even meeting with Pastor Dino, and I was like, he was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I think I'm supposed to plant a church. And I said, what do you think I should do? He goes, I think you should plant a church. And he was like, man, I'm 50, however old he is now. He's like, I'm 50. Is he like 58 or something? I don't know. He's like, man, he goes, I thought about planting a church the other day. You know, that's just how he is. And he's like, Jason, get out there, get after it, do it. We believe in you. And so, man, you know, that's it. And I think, so to sum it all up, it was a lot of way, you know, it took a lot of time to say this. I think at the end of the day, you have to know who you are, who you're not, what God's called you to do, what he hasn't called you to do. And at the end of the day, you have to just walk in obedience and faith and trust. And I've always thought this. I told my wife, whenever we went to San Francisco, we struggled and wrestled with going there. And I remember us looking at each other and saying, what story do we want to tell in a rocking chair when we're 80 years old on our front porch that we could have went to San Francisco? We thought, well, what if? Or the story we're going to tell now. We're going to tell it. We're going to laugh about it. We're going to be like, it was wild. It was an adventure. We trusted God. It was crazy. Look what the Lord has done. Look at the people that are saved. So the same exact thing for Franklin. We looked at each other and was like, when we're in a rocking chair, when we're 80, what story do we want to tell? I don't want to tell the story that I just played it safe and I wondered that if we still had it or if we could still do it. It's like, man, let's go reach some people with the gospel. Let's go love people and serve people and care for people. Let's go. Let's do this, So that's it.
Well, it's pretty obvious hearing that you're doing what you should be doing. And I don't think there was any doubt in Amy and I's mind that you would be planting another church. We just didn't know when or where it would be. And so I'm glad you're planting where you're planting. Maybe tell us a little bit about the name of the church, what that means, where that came from, and what's the hope behind that.
Yeah, Citizens Church. Sometimes I've talked to people like, Citizens, that's like a bank. Is that like a bank name? Remember Citizens Bank? I think Citizens Bank was in Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
But, I was reading, I'm big on I think your name, and we talk about this at Art, your name needs to have some significance to it. And it needs to be obviously founded, in scripture and spiritual things, stuff like that, but it needs to tie into your mission and who you are. So anyway, I was praying one day and I was reading through Ephesians. I was studying the book of Ephesians and I got to Ephesians 2. And obviously, Paul, he's talking to the Gentiles that feel like outsiders. And he says to them, he's like, guys, you're no longer foreigners and strangers. He's like, you're citizens of the household of God. And he says, you're being built together and built on the foundation, which is the prophets and the apostles, with Christ Jesus, the chief cornerstone. And he goes on and says, you're being built together to become a dwelling for the Spirit of God. And I read that and I thought a couple of things. One is my heart has always been for the people that feel like outsiders, that feel like they don't belong in church. They feel like they don't belong at the table. They feel like they don't belong in spiritual family. They feel like they're unfit, feel like a misfit, feel like they don't deserve it. Those are the people that need it the most. And so I've always had a heart for those people. And the second thing is where it says you're citizens. I love that because there is this dual citizenship that we have. It's like, yes, I'm a citizen of Williamson County here in Franklin, but I'm also a citizen of heaven, right? And there's an assignment, a kingdom assignment that's on me. I'm not building the church. Jesus is building his church. He says, I'll build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail. So I'm not building the church. I'm building the kingdom. And as a citizen of the kingdom of God, that's what I'm called to build in this community, is to build the kingdom of God as he builds a church. But even I love the continued language where he says, what is this church being built on? On the foundation of the prophets and the apostles, which is an ever ancient, though this is a new church, it's built on an ever ancient foundation. And there are generations that have gone before me that have laid foundations, even pastors in this city that have been paving the way, that we're just building upon that foundation. And who is the cornerstone? It's not me. It's not a pastor. It's not a person, but Jesus is the cornerstone of this thing. And what is it? It's a community being built up and built together to become this place that will actually host the very presence of God. And so that's where the name came from.
Well, I love that because I think it also speaks to the fact that we're part of an intentional, never-ending chain that's been passed down to us from the first apostles. Give us a journey of what it's been like. What have you been doing to plant this church, and maybe even share some things. Hey, these are some things we were doing differently. Here's some things we felt worked well that we're going to do again.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that. I knew you'd ask that question because everyone asked that question. What are you going to do different? What are you going to do different? I was thinking about when I was a kid, I used to play basketball, like I'm sure you did. And you're in the driveway with the basketball goal and you have the ball and you do that. You simulate, I can't even say the word. You pretend like you're in a championship game and you've got the ball and you go 10, you're dribbling around 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you shoot. And you brick it, you don't make it. And what do? You don't walk off. You get that ball and you go 10, 9, 8. You just keep doing it until you make it. Mm-hmm. And there's little tweaks with that do-over that you make so that you can make it. I thought about even playing golf yesterday with Matt Laborde, our buddy at ARC. I'm shooting a birdie putt for the last hole of the course. And he gives me the read. I'm about 15 feet away. And he goes, hey, you're 2 cups to the left. So I hit the shot and I barely missed it. And Matt hits the ball back to me and goes, I gave you a bad read. My bad. It's only a cup to the left. You get a do-over. And so I hit it again and I made the adjustments. I hit it a little bit different, a little bit more to the right, and I sunk the birdie putt. And the reality is that if we just shoot the same way, strike at the ball the same way after we've just had a go at it, then we're probably going to end up with the same results. So it's good to adjust and to learn. And so I think one of the first things we did was just say, okay, what's different? What are we going to do different? And the first thing the Lord showed me is like this. It's not that you're going to do things different. You're different. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is think about it. we're going to preach the word. We're going to teach the word. We're going to do small groups and community. We're going to get people in the presence of God. We're going to pray for people at the altar. It's the stuff we've been doing. We all do it everywhere, right? But what's different now is there are some things that I've learned about myself, about God, about people, about how to measure success. Like, what does actual success in the kingdom look like? And so those things are informing not just what we're going to do, but who we are, and being at peace and at rest with that. And so that's the first thing I'd tell you, is that we had to wrestle with that at the beginning, and great counseling helps with that. You know, I'm a big proponent of counseling, going through counseling and processing those things. What needs to change in me now as a pastor and a church planner and a leader? Are there unhealthy expectations that I have of people or of God or of myself and so wrestling with all those things, doing that deep interior work, I think puts a grit and a fortitude inside of you, and some health, to where when you do go through the planting season, the pioneering season, the pastoring season, when it's hard, when people walk away, when the money is tight, all those things are going to happen. If you don't have any interior structure that has integrity and is solid and has been already wrestled through to get you to that place, you're going to crumble, you're going to crack, you're going to fall apart. And so that was the first thing that we did. And then the second thing was just saying, hey, San Francisco or Franklin's different from San Francisco. The needs, there's a lot of the same needs, but there's a lot of needs that are different. San Francisco is a post-Christian secular place. Even the believers are secularized in a lot of ways because of the nature of the city. Now, in Franklin, you have a form of godliness, but lacking the power thereof. You have religion. You have even secular people that are Christianized, but they're not Christian, because it's a Christianized context. And so it's completely different. So learning to contextualize ministry, messaging, all those things are really important. But at the end of the day, the things that are they work everywhere is radical hospitality. People feel it. Presence of God. People know it when they're in it. A good solid preaching and teaching of the word. All those things, like, it's the same everywhere. So just get really good at that. Focus on that. And learn along the way. We're gonna do things different, I'm sure, and we'll change things and we'll pivot and adapt. But I think the first thing is just making sure that you're different when you go into something again. Take the things that you've learned. You'd be a fool if you didn't.
Well, one of the joys that I've had of doing this podcast, this will be the third season, is there's so many times where there's something I want to say, and I ask a question, and the person I'm interviewing says it so much better than I could have ever said it. And I just had one of those experiences with you answering that question, because I do think that, spending the last 10 years helping leaders at ARC, and that's what I've been doing my entire life. Even before I was in ministry, when I was a volunteer at my church, I was helping leaders. And it's interesting to me that you can give the same information to two different people and get two different results, because it's not the information, it's the person, and there's so many people I want to help, but I'm like, hey, until you change, I can't help you as much as I'd like to. And so I thought that was really important. And so I don't know if there's anything else you can add to that, but I just felt that was worth emphasizing one more time.
Yeah, I think, and maybe we'll get into this as I'm sure we're about to wrap up, but I think one of the biggest things for me is, I think I went into San Francisco and no one shaped this definition. I shaped it myself. Maybe a little bit of church culture in America had something to do with it, but I think some of it had to go all the way back to my family of origin, with my relationship with my father, and that this performance to win approval, all that stuff. We all have our different things that we deal with. But what happened for me is it really deeply shaped some stuff in my identity that made me define success with numbers, with crowds, with all that stuff. And so planting a church in San Francisco, you're not planting a church with 1,000 people, and you're not going to be 20,000 people overnight. It's just a different thing there. And so for me, coming from two mega churches I was a part of, one that was probably 10,000 members, another one 35,000 members, and then I plant this little church in San Francisco, it ate at my soul for a while, because my metric for success was that and not obedience. And what I had to learn in that whole process is, God, success is not doing something that looks big or doing something that looks grand or doing something that looks whatever, but success is simply hearing, believing, and obeying. Saying, God, this is what you've called me to do, and I'm going to be obedient to that. And regardless of what the outcome looks like, I say this all the time, you probably have heard me say it a million times, outlook is on me. That is, I'm going to have an outlook of faith. Believe that God's going to do great things. So outlook is on me. Output is on me. That's I'm to work as hard as I can, right? In a healthy way, healthy hustle. Output is on me. Obedience is on me. I'm just to do the things that God's called me to do and be who God's called me to be. And then the outcome, that's on God. So the first three are on me, but the last one's on God. So whatever that outcome may be. And so I had to get to that place, and I'll tell you, I haven't arrived yet. That's still a work in my heart, and I think it's an ongoing work for every leader and pastor to make sure that we're defining success right. But I can tell you this, I think Pete Scazzero talks about it. If you don't have a healthy biblical definition of success, it will be to the detriment of your emotional health and your soul. And your soul will languish even when the crowds grow if your definition of success is wrong. And so I've tried to get that revelation in my head down into my heart and try to live by that. I just want to be obedient to what you call me to do. And trust that whatever the outcome may be, even with this church plant or whatever he calls us to do, that I just surrender that to him. He's the Lord of the harvest. I am not. I'm just a laborer. He is the Lord of the harvest. I cannot determine what Launch Sunday looks like, if we have multiple campuses, if we have thousands of people. That is his doing. Mm-hmm. My job is just to hear, believe, and obey him. I mean, you think about John the Baptist. If you look at his life and ministry, I think Josephus, the historian, said that he had 3 years of ministry. I'm pretty sure it was 3 years of ministry. At the beginning of it, it blew up. It was huge. And then it had a steep and steady decline over the course of the years as it came to a conclusion. And towards the end of it, in John, I think it was John 3, one of the things you see is when people are leaving his ministry and going to Jesus, John's disciples say to him, they're like, John, all of our guys, they're all leaving. They're all going over to this Jesus guy. Mm-hmm. And John's response was so smooth. He's like, oh, guys, he's like, I'm not the groom. I'm just the best man. And he says, you can only receive what heaven gives you. And he was like, man, my joy is full. My joy is complete. And they're freaking out, but he's not. Why? Because he was secure in who he was. If you look at even the previous chapter, he's like, I'm not the prophet Elijah. I'm not this person. I'm not that person. I'm just the voice of someone crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. And I love that, because when you get the right definition of success, like I think John had, even though the culture around you may look at you and see a failure, if obedience is how you define success, then in God's eyes, I really believe this. You'll hear what Jesus said about John behind his back. He's the greatest of all time. So everyone else thought he was losing and failing because his ministry was not growing. It was actually diminishing. And yet he was at peace and he had joy. And I think the first thing you lose as a pastor and a church planner, or anything for that matter, when it doesn't look as successful as what you thought it was going to look like, you'll lose your joy in doing what you're doing if you don't have a healthy definition of success. But if obedience is the goal, and you have what Eugene Peterson said, a long obedience in the same direction, and Jesus is the goal, then man, you're at a better place of peace and health emotionally. And that's what we're trying to at least live at and live from and go for in this season.
Well, Jason, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a great way for us to start this season, is with this word, because really what I'm hoping to do is to help people who want to relaunch, rebrand, revitalize their church. And a lot of people feel stuck. They look around and see what other people are experiencing. They're not comparing in a bad way. It's just the reality of the situation that they're in. And I think what you've done is you've kind of reset the bar for us of what success looks like. And I can't think of a better answer than, hear, believe, and obey. You kind of started off this conversation with that, talking about, hey, when I stand before God, and it's just me and him, I got to give an account to what he told me to do. It doesn't matter what you think. And I think we need more of that. And it's a very prophetic way of looking at life and making decisions. But we need more prophetic in the way that we do ministry and look at life. And I think that's going to be very, very foundational for me this season as I talk to other people. It might be something we keep coming back to, but I think that's just excellent, man. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, man, thank you so much. So grateful to be on here.
Well, I'm real grateful for you too. I know you have a lot to offer, and so I wanted to give you a chance to tell people how they can connect with you after this, your church and Sidecar Leader, if they're a church out there looking to get some help, or just someone that wants to just connect with you relationally. How can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personally, you can hit me up on Instagram. That's easy. Jason T. Laird. So it's at Jason T. Laird, Laird. Hit me up on Instagram there. You can follow along. And we can stay connected. And then also, if you're a pastor, lead pastor, executive pastor, looking for some resources, some coaching, any of those kind of things, you can go to sidecarleader.com, or you can go to our Instagram, sidecarleader. And then if this is the last one, since now I'm a pastor again, planting a church, if you or someone that you know is in the Franklin area, the Nashville region, tell them to come check us out. They can find us online, citizens.church, and our Instagram is citizens.online. And we'd love to host them, serve them any way that we can.
Well, great conversation. Thank you, Jason, so much for taking time. A busy, busy week as you're preparing to launch in 2 weeks. So thank you or a week and a half. So thank you for doing that. And can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Love you, man.
Love you too. Bye. That was a great conversation with Jason Laird. I want to thank him once again for joining us on this conversation and sharing some funny stories and great insight. I also want to thank our sponsor, Visit Planner. You can find out more about them at visitplanner.church. Brad and Zach and their team there do a wonderful job of using digital ads to help people plan visits for your church. Jason is using them. I've just seen some tremendous results from them, and I know where their heart is, and that is to serve the kingdom. So if you're a church looking to get more visitors or to try out some digital ads, I hope you check them out. And I also want to let you know that if you're someone that's looking for some help in coaching, consulting, strategizing, I'd love to help you as well. I've had the opportunity to help several churches over the last few years, relaunch campuses, rebrand, and just kind of restructure things to gain more momentum. So if you're looking for that kind of help, I'd love to help you. You can email me at josh@believeagain.co. And if I'm not a good fit for you, I could recommend at least 3 or 4 others that could really, really help you out. And I want to, again, just thank you for taking time to join us today. I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, keep believing and leading strong.